For the people of Greensburg, Kansas, devastation is an understatement.
You just can't believe that this could ever happen. Pull those pine trees, it's been there 50 years. Pull them up out of the ground. And just think of that thing, just pulling them up out of the ground and just like toothpicks.
Dean Gamble, a retired school teacher and wheat farmer, couldn't believe his eyes when he emerged from his cellar last Friday night.
This was the porch right here.
The 76-year-old had recently moved into a new home on the north side of town. Last weekend's killer tornado threw his roof clear across Greensburg. His trucks were crushed by pine trees, and most of his valuables were gone. When Market to Market caught up with Gamble days after the F5 tornado ravaged every building in town, he was still picking up the pieces, finding a few personal items worth keeping.
I'll have to get some glass for the shade, but of course this got bent a little bit, but hopefully I can straighten it out and I can still find this kind of glass.
Gamble's home fared better than most structures. Some houses are nothing more than concrete slabs, basements filled with shattered furniture, small cars and farm trucks crushed, thrown hundreds of yards away by a tornado larger than the entire town. Nothing in Greensburg was spared from the tornado. A large John Deere dealership on the western edge of town was decimated. Combines dumped into water-filled ditches, others destroyed by flying limbs and pieces of nearby homes. The dealership estimates dozens of combines were destroyed, totaling millions of dollars in losses, a fraction of the estimated cost to rebuild the entire rural Kansas town from the ground up. Hours after the storm, aid began pouring into Greensburg. Local, state, and federal authorities were a constant sight in nearly every section of town. The U.S. military has already begun the cleanup process here, one expected to last months. Military helicopters circled one of the town's last standing structures, the local grain elevator. But even this building will be torn down if officials discover substantial structural damage.
There's a certain spirit in the Midwest of our country, a pioneer spirit that still exists, and I'm confident this community will be rebuilt. But to the extent that we can help, we will.
With many in the media focusing on Greensburg, Market to Market chose to follow the tornado's path north as it ravaged farms, crops, and other rural communities throughout central Kansas. In Ellenwood, northeast of Greensburg, the devastation also was clear. Rural churches were decapitated by the storm, and power lines were still down 4 days later.
This used to be a beautiful farmstead there was 6 buildings here and vehicles. Our vehicles are totally gone, but I mean it was nice before, but now we have nothing.
John Minzer's farm was swept away by the tornado. Every outbuilding has disappeared after high winds tore the barns and single garage into pieces, scattering the debris across nearby farms. Neighbors have already come by to help, offering bulldozers and moving equipment. Minzer, who works for a local cooperative, said his home was left standing, but will have to be torn down soon.
You can't imagine the feeling until it actually happens to you. It's just horrible. We'll rebuild, we'll be all right.
Minzer's 20 head of cattle somehow made it through the storm intact, but others weren't so lucky. Stories throughout central Kansas reported farmers finding dead livestock from other counties on their farms. Even rural residents outside of the tornado's path weren't spared from the torrential rains that dumped 14 inches of heavy precipitation, swelling local rivers over their banks. The nearby Arkansas River was at its highest level in history as the waters closed highways and flooded crop fields.
This field we'll lose 100% of. Not only because it's got a severe hail damage from the storm, but also because it's just going to drown out, and when it drowns out, the head won't eject out and it won't fill, so this is a total loss.
Keith Miller farms over 8,000 acres of wheat, corn, and alfalfa in central Kansas. A substantial number of his fields are underwater, and probably will be for weeks.
This has been one of the roughest years in agriculture I can remember.
East of Ellenwood, near Lyons, Kansas, a group of wheat farmers took stock of a crop that has already suffered an Easter freeze and now faces considerable flooding.
We've taken significant bushels off in the central area of the state because of this last weekend's storms.
Well, it's devastating because you have two different time frames where you're going through an emotional high and low as farmers.
It's been a pretty somber event for most of my farm customers. It's going to be a huge economic impact to this area and also to the local businesses as well as the farm producers.
The farmers led market to market on a tour of wheat fields blasted by this spring's late freeze.
And you can see plants that are deformed, like this one that has multiple bends in it. That one is not a viable plant anymore. That one will not yield.
And other fields recently under 6 feet of water.
Most of the damage you'll see is the fact that you can still see all the mud down below. You can see the debris, the filth on the plants. This affects photosynthesis.
Wheat farmers in central Kansas did not attempt to estimate the total losses for the region, but their outlook is grim, as some fields may take weeks to dry out. Back in Greensburg, many residents want to rebuild, while others just hope to move on. Dean Gamble isn't ready to make that decision.
I'd like to rebuild, but at my age, should I? I don't know. I think in time, when the shock of all of this is over, you might be more rational than what I might be now. We thought we had our lives well intact and everything would be great. But now what? You just got to start all over again.
While residents come to grips with the worst tornado disaster in nearly a decade, the devastation is all too clear. Hundreds of farms, 12 lives, and one small town still picking up the pieces of what's left. For Market to Market, I'm Andrew Batt.
I don't know.